Welcome, everyone. Ready to dive deep. Today, we're tackling a place that's both a geographic marvel and a historical puzzle, the Northwest Passage.
A place that's captivated imaginations for centuries. A route through the Arctic that held the promise of a shortcut, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But, and it's a big but, it's not as simple as one single strait. We're talking a whole network of channels winding through those islands of the Canadian Arctic archipelago.
And sought after by explorers for, longer than most people realize, I'd bet.
Oh, absolutely. When we think age of exploration, it's Columbus and his ilk, right? But Vikings were already making their mark on the Canadian Arctic hundreds of years prior. We're talking evidence of them on Ellesmere Island. Think about those journeys, totally unknown waters, only the stars and wind to guide them.
Makes you appreciate having GPS on your phone, huh? But if they were already exploring that far back, why didn't the Vikings lock down a regular route through this Northwest Passage?
Well, picture this. They're sailing along, then bam, the little ice age hits. Temperatures plummet, and not just for a year or two, we're talking centuries. Any open water they'd found, now a wall of ice. Exploration on hold, courtesy of Mother Nature.
Talk about a reality check. But explorers, they're a persistent bunch, aren't they? Our research turned up some attempts early on that were, well, let's just say they had some interesting ideas about geography.
Oh yeah, for sure. You've got Francisco de Ulloa, back in the 1500s, convinced he'd found the western entrance, even gave it a fancy name, the Strait of Anian, supposed to be this channel linking the Pacific to the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Which, spoiler, isn't a real thing.
Nope, not in the slightest. Shows how powerful a good story can be, even if it's totally made up, right? But bad maps weren't their only problem. Back then, there was this belief that seawater, unlike freshwater, wouldn't freeze.
Wait, are you serious? They're sailing into the Arctic with iffy maps and iffy science. That's either brave or clueless. Maybe a bit of both.
Highlights the danger these explorers faced. And the story of Henry Hudson, textbook example of how risky this was.
Hudson, right, like the Hudson Bay. But his trip through the passage wasn't exactly a pleasure cruise, was it?
Far from it. 1611, he's exploring what we now call James Bay, and the ship gets stuck. Frozen solid, now imagine. Trapped, supplies dwindling, Arctic winter closing in. His crew panics.
Can't say I blame him.
They mutiny, cast Hudson adrift, a small boat, his son was with him, and a few loyal crewmen. Never heard from again.
Harsh. A reminder that it wasn't just the maps that were dangerous, but human nature itself under that kind of pressure. But some folks did figure out how to not just survive, but thrive in the Arctic. What's the story with John Ray?
Ray's fascinating. Scottish explorer, mid-1800s, and he gets it. Local knowledge is key. He sees how deeply the Inuit understand the Arctic, knowledge passed down for generations.
So instead of forcing his European ways on this, unforgiving environment, Ray adapts, learns from the Inuit.
Exactly. Ditches the heavy European clothes, starts wearing Inuit garb, way better suited for the Arctic, learns to build igloos, navigate by the stars, even how they hunt, their whole way of life.
Talk about when in Rome. But on a whole other level.
No kidding. And it wasn't just survival for Ray. He started to read the Arctic landscape, understand the ice in a way most Europeans just didn't.
Which is huge, right? Because for the longest time, the Arctic was this blank space, hostile, something to be conquered.
And Ray's one of the folks proving it's not empty at all. It's complex, it's alive, and yeah, it can sustain you, but you got to know how to listen to it, work with it.
Almost feels like a preview of what's to come, both the successes and the tragedies, as exploration continued. And speaking of which, our source material dives deep on the Franklin expedition. That name is synonymous with ambition and disaster.
A story that, yeah, it captivated the world, but also showed just how brutal the Arctic could be if you weren't prepared.
Give me a refresher. What were Franklin's goals? It was a huge undertaking, if I recall.
1845, John Franklin sets sail. 2 ships, HMS Erebus, HMS Terror. Goal: chart the entire Northwest Passage once and for all. They had the latest tech, seasoned crew, enough supplies to last them years. Optimism was high, to say the least.
And yet, it went so wrong.
It did. 1846, both ships are icebound, near King William Island, stuck right in the thick of the passage, at the Arctic's mercy, and despite their best efforts, they couldn't get free.
2 years in the ice. Can't even imagine the mental strain on those men.
Haunting, isn't it? And every bit we learn makes it more tragic. Notes they left, artifacts, even the remains they found, it's all helped piece together what happened. It seems like brutal conditions, dwindling supplies, and a very unexpected threat led to their demise.
Right, this is where things get kind of strange. The lead poisoning.
Out of left field, right. So they had canned goods, newfangled thing back then. Turns out those cans, sealed with lead solder, analyzed the crew's remains, off-the-charts levels of lead poisoning. Means their own food was slowly poisoning them, affecting their judgment, their health.
Defeated by their own provisions. What a cruel twist.
It is.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to talk about the evidence of cannibalism. Last days of the expedition, starving, desperate, Odzum resorted to consuming the dead to try and survive.
Grim reminder of what humans are capable of when pushed to the absolute limit. Easy to judge from our comfy 21st century, but those final days must have been hell on earth. Franklin's story is tragic, but the Northwest Passage saga doesn't end there, does it?
Not at all. In a way, they paved the way. Even if it was with their sacrifice, that's where Robert McClure comes in.
Right, he's often credited with the Northwest Passage discovery, yeah.
Yeah.
But our research, it's not as simple as him just sailing through.
Good catch. McClure's journey, 1850 to 54, it's nuts. Brutal ice, uncharted areas. He even resorted to sledding across frozen-over sea ice just to keep moving.
So even after Franklin, the Northwest Passage was still a nightmare if you wanted to sail it.
Oh, yeah. McClure proved a route existed, but it wasn't the easy shortcut people dreamed of. Ice was still a huge barrier, and the route itself, it was less a passage, more like a maze of narrow channels.
So who finally sails through the whole thing, start to finish, in a ship?
Roald Amundsen, Norwegian explorer in 1906, he does it. All the way through, by ship.
Years after others are charting bits and pieces, right? It's like each expedition, they're building on what came before, the successes, even the failures. But what was Amundsen's secret weapon? Better tech.
Funny enough, part of it was his ship. Smaller, easier to maneuver, called the Gea. Converted herring boat, actually. He knew a big ship would be a death trap in those narrow channels, all choked with ice.
So sometimes smaller is better when you're exploring. Who knew?
Exactly. It's about adapting, playing to the environment's strengths. But it wasn't just the Gea. Amundsen, he'd learned from what happened to others. He lived with the Inuit near King William Island for 2 years, learning how they navigated the ice, survived, everything.
There's that theme again. Respect for indigenous knowledge. It pops up again and again in the Passage's story.
It does, and it's a lesson that applies beyond the Arctic, don't you think? Listening to the people who truly know a place, realizing different cultures have wisdom we need, it's important. But as fascinating as all this history is, the Northwest Passage, it's the present and the future that are even more interesting, especially with how our planet's changing. You know what I mean? The Passage's story, it's just beginning.
That's a really good point. Which brings up the question. If Amundsen sailed it over 100 years ago, why isn't the Northwest Passage packed with cargo ships today? Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Faster routes, less fuel.
And that, my friend, is where things get really interesting. See, the very thing that's making the Northwest Passage more accessible climate change is also making it wildly unpredictable, even dangerous.
Hold on, I gotta stop you there. Less ice, I think that's good for ships.
Makes sense. Right. And to a point, it is. Arctic ice, it's shrinking fast, opens up navigation, but it's not as easy as it melts ships in. The Arctic, it's still brutal.
How so? Give me the rundown.
Even with less ice overall, there are still huge chunks, some the size of islands, just floating around. And they don't follow any schedule. Currents, winds, they shift. It's a maze, constantly changing. Then you add sunstorms, fog so thick you can't see, and the fact that a lot of the passage is still unmapped.
Okay, starting to get the picture. Not exactly smooth sailing.
Not even close. Try piloting a supertanker loaded with cargo through that. Visibility's crap, the weather can change in an instant. The risks are enormous.
I bet those ships, the insurance must be insane.
Sky high. Way more expensive than usual routes. And then there's infrastructure, or lack thereof. The Arctic is remote, rescue is hard to come by. If something happens out there, you're on your own for a long, long time.
So yeah, more than just ice, logistics, economics, it all adds up to make large-scale shipping impractical for now. But there's another layer to this, right? Who controls these waters? That's a bone of contention.
Ding, ding, ding. And now we're into geopolitics. Canada. They say it's their internal waters, meaning they control who goes through, what they do there.
And I imagine countries who see dollar signs in a Northwest Passage route, they're not thrilled about that.
You're getting it. The U.S., big time, they're saying, nope, it's an international strait. Anyone can pass freely. Classic conflict of interest, with money and strategy fueling the fire.
Any examples of this getting, shall we say, heated in the past?
Oh, a few key ones. 1969, U.S. sends an oil tanker, the SS Manhattan, right through. No asking, no permission. Canada was furious, said it proved their point about sovereignty.
Bold move, sailing a tanker through like that. Talk about poking the bear.
It didn't go unnoticed, that's for sure, and it wasn't an isolated incident. 85, a U.S. Coast Guard icebreaker, same deal. Caused more tension, Canada doubled down, said our waters. There have even been reports of U.S. submarines going through unannounced, which muddies the waters even further.
So yeah, geopolitical powder keg is an apt description. What's your take on this? Will the Northwest Passage be where things boil over internationally, or is there hope for a peaceful resolution?
$1 million question, really. The stakes are high, no doubt. And with climate change messing with the Arctic, that route's only going to get more tempting, more disputed. But it's not all doom and gloom, promise.
Got to have a little optimism, right? What are we overlooking?
Well, amidst all the arguing and ships, there's this ecological thing happening that's pretty wild. Remember how we talked about the planet being connected? What happens in one place affects the rest.
Lay it on me. I do love a good twist.
Gray whales, they're back in the Atlantic. And scientists think it's because of the Northwest Passage opening up.
Seriously, I thought those were Pacific Ocean whales mostly.
They are, but get this. Centuries ago, they were hunted to extinction in the Atlantic. Gone. But lately, there have been a few confirmed sightings, one even in the Mediterranean back in 2010.
So they're swimming from the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic. Now that's a road trip.
Right. And the best guess is they're swimming from their usual feeding grounds in the Pacific through the passage and bam, Atlantic. Shows how nature adapts, how this changing Arctic is shaking things up for everyone.
Talk about a perfect example. The Northwest Passage, it's bigger than just ice and ships. It's history, it's exploration, it's politics, it's nature, all tied together.
Nailed it. And as the Arctic keeps changing, there'll be more surprises, challenges, and hopefully more chances to learn and adapt along the way.
It's like the Northwest Passage is this crossroads, where human stories and the natural world, they crash right into each other.
Perfect way to put it. And these gray whales coming back, scientists are going bonkers trying to figure it out.
How so? What are they, like the big mysteries about this whole thing?
Well, for one, how are these whales navigating? Is it pure instinct? Some sort of ancestral memory from when the passage was open, way back when? Or are they learning new routes on the fly, adapting as the ice changes? It'd be huge if we could understand that, how they're pulling it off.
It's like they're retracing the steps of those first explorers, but they're doing it because they have to, not because they're looking for something.
Kind of beautiful, isn't it? And it gets to that bigger point. The Arctic's always in motion. Past, present, they're always bumping shoulders up there. And like we've been saying, humans are part of that story now, whether we like it or not.
Especially when you bring in climate change.
Exactly. The ice melting so fast, humans are driving that, no way around it, makes the Northwest Passage more open for now. But, and we've talked about this, it's riskier too, less predictable. Hard to see what the long game is.
So where does that leave us? What is the future of the Northwest Passage? Shipping lanes, international hotspots, whale superhighway, or all of the above?
If I had a crystal ball that clear, I'd be rich. But that's what's so gripping about it, right? This one place, it's like a snapshot of the whole planet's problems and potential. We're seeing climate change happen right now, how ecosystems are linked, how messy global politics are, all in this one spot.
So for folks listening, what can we even do with this information? It feels kind of huge, all these global problems.
Here's the thing. We're not just bystanders in this. Choices we make every day, they ripple out and affect the Arctic too. But knowing the history, the science, the politics, it makes us better caretakers of the planet, right?
A call to action, though.
In a way, yeah. The Northwest Passage, it reminds us that the world's connected. What we do here matters over there. And the future. It's not written yet. This is a place where everything's colliding. As the Arctic changes, we gotta pay attention, learn from it, and hopefully steer things in a better direction.
A direction where those gray whales can keep making their incredible journey, eh? A symbol of nature figuring it out even when things get tough. Thanks for diving deep with us, everyone. This story, it sticks with you. More questions than answers, maybe. But in the end, it reminds you how amazing and how fragile our planet really is.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe the next chapter in this whole Northwest Passage saga, it'll be written by someone listening right now. Okay, listener, so you've sent us a ton of spider facts from Wikipedia, which No judgment, can be like a rabbit hole of random but super interesting info.
Yeah, Wikipedia will do that to you.
For real. So today we're going to like really dig into these facts. We're going to figure out why they matter, what they tell us about spiders, maybe even what they say about us. Get ready to see these eight-legged creatures in a whole new light.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love where you're going with this because it's so easy to get stuck on that, like, whoa, that's creepy aspect
Yeah.
of spiders.
Yeah.
But there's like serious genius woven into how they work, how they behave.
It's true. So the article starts off with anatomy, which, fair enough, seems like as good a place as any to start.
Yeah.
And apparently, and I can't believe I never knew this, spiders, they're not insects.
Yeah.
They're arachnids, which I think means they have a different number of body parts or something.
You're on the right track. It's not just the number of body parts, it's also how they're like put together, Instead of having like a separate head and thorax like insects have, spiders have this power combo called a cephalothorax.
Okay, so it's like their head and chest are all one big unit. Is there like an advantage to that?
Totally, yeah. Think about it. That fused head-chest situation gives their sensory organs, especially those 8 eyes, a much wider range of motion.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so they're getting this like 360-degree view of the world, which is, key for hunting, but also for not becoming something else's dinner.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like they've evolved this built-in security system.
Literally, exactly.
I like it.
And while we're talking about like evolutionary advantages, we got to mention how spiders extend their legs.
Okay.
Because, they don't just rely on muscles for that. They actually use hydraulic pressure.
Yeah.
It's actually why, like, when you see a dead spider, its legs are all curled up because the pressure's gone.
Oh, really? I never even thought about that. But that makes sense. I
Yeah.
always just assumed they like had super strong muscles or something.
It's actually, it's way more efficient than that, yeah.
Interesting.
So imagine, like, a system of these tiny tubes filled with fluid inside their legs. So to extend a leg, they pump fluid in, and to retract it, they release the pressure. And this system is, like, incredibly powerful for their size and allows them to do things like, to make those, like, lightning-fast jumps and stuff.
Wow, okay. That's way cooler than just muscles.
Right.
Speaking of cool and surprisingly complex spider silk,
Oh, yeah.
apparently there are at least 6 different types of spider silk. 6?
Got least.
Who knew?
It's true. And they all have different, like, chemical makeups, designed for, like, specific purposes. Some are going to be sticky for trapping prey. Others are going to be super strong for building webs. And some are even used as, like, safety lines to, like, prevent falls.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a whole toolkit.
That's incredible.
Except they make it themselves, which is, I don't know.
Yeah,
Wild.
it's pretty impressive. And this isn't just like any old silk, right? Because the article mentioned that it's like incredibly strong, even compared to things like nylon and stuff.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Pound for pound, spider silk can be stronger than steel.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's also incredibly elastic, meaning it can stretch without breaking. So scientists are like obsessed with this stuff.
Yeah.
They're trying to like, figure out how can we replicate these properties for things like, super strong fabrics or even like artificial tendons.
Saw like spider silk jackets someday. I'm into it.
Maybe, yeah. But even if we don't all end up wearing spider silk, just understanding how it works could totally revolutionize material science.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, before we like go full fashion show, I need to know more about these different silks and how they're used. You mentioned like safety lines, but you also mentioned wrapping up prey. I mean, those seem like pretty different uses.
Oh, totally. Yeah, like the variety of uses is part of what makes spider silk so fascinating. Let's take the bolus spider, for instance.
The bolus spider. That doesn't sound very threatening.
I know, right? Don't let the name fool you, though. They're incredible hunters. So instead of building a web, they create a single line of silk with a sticky blob at the end. And it's like a lasso.
What?
And they swing it around to catch flying insects.
Hold on. They literally make a lasso.
Yeah, they do.
That's terrifying, but also kind of awesome.
Right.
So, okay, so they're not all about those like intricate webs then.
Not at all. Webs are just one tool in the arsenal, right?
Right.
Some spiders, like trapdoor spiders, for example, they create these hidden burrows that are lined with silk.
Okay.
And they just wait for like an unsuspecting insect to wander past.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then bam, dinner is served.
It's like they've mastered every type of real estate. Like
Right.
they've got the high-rise condos with the webs, they've got the underground bunkers with the burrows.
Exactly.
I love it.
And don't forget, like, the nomads,
Mm-hmm.
the hunters, like wolf spiders, who rely on speed and agility to chase down their prey. They might use silk for things like, wrapping up their meals, creating egg sacs, but they're not, like, building permanent structures.
That's so cool. This is making me see spiders in a whole new light. They're not just like these creepy crawlers in the corner.
Yeah.
They're strategic,
They're resourceful.
resourceful. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Which brings me to something I never would have expected. The article mentions a spider that's like a vegetarian?
I know, right?
Oh,
It does sound a little strange, right?
right?
But there's actually a species of jumping spider, Bagheera kiplingi, it's called.
Okay.
And it primarily feeds on plant matter.
Wait, seriously? Not even like a nibble here and there? Like they've evolved to be mostly herbivorous.
They have, yeah, it's wild.
That seems crazy for a spider.
It does, but there's this, like, fascinating reason behind it. So they live on acacia trees,
Okay.
and these trees have this, like, symbiotic relationship with ants.
Okay. I'm going to need you to like break this down for me because,
Okay, so basically the ants, they protect the trees from other insects, right?
okay.
And in return, the trees produce these little protein-rich snacks called Belchin bodies.
So it's like a whole ecosystem built on this one food source.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Bagheera Kipling has figured out a way to exploit that.
Wow.
They've developed a taste for these Belchin bodies, essentially cutting out the middleman, and they've got a direct line to the good stuff.
That is incredible. It just goes to show you evolution finds a way, even if it means like breaking all the rules of what we think a spider should be.
It really does. It challenges our assumptions.
Totally. Speaking of challenging assumptions, let's talk about how the majority of spiders, the carnivores, how they actually eat their food.
Okay.
And listener, be warned, this is not for the faint of heart.
Let's just say spiders don't have the luxury of chewing their food.
Okay, I'm already feeling a little queasy.
Yeah, they have to get a little creative.
Okay.
Since they can't chew, they inject these digestive enzymes into their prey, and it basically turns them into, shall we say, a smoothie.
So they liquefy their food outside of their bodies. It's like a gruesome version of one of those at-home meal kits.
It's true.
Oh my God.
It's incredibly efficient.
Okay.
A little bit unsettling to us.
Yeah, just a tad.
But yeah, they basically like suck up the pre-digested soup, leaving behind the empty exoskeleton.
I'm simultaneously impressed and slightly horrified.
Yeah.
The good thing I'm not a spider, because I'd be a terrible hunter.
Right.
Well, not all spiders rely on, liquefying their prey. I mean, remember those vegetarian spiders we talked about?
Exactly. Yeah.
The Bagheera kiplingi? It's amazing how they've adapted to their environment, feeding on those Belchin bodies instead of insects. But it makes you wonder, could there be other vegetarian spiders out there just waiting to be discovered?
I mean, it's certainly possible, right? And I think that's what's so exciting about studying spiders. Every discovery opens up these new possibilities, and it challenges our understanding of, the natural world.
Totally. It's they're just full of surprises.
Speaking of surprises, did you know that some spiders are even, musical?
Wait, what? Musical? You're going to have to elaborate on that.
Oh, okay. So, musical might be stretching it a bit.
Okay.
But they use sound in really fascinating ways, especially for communication and for mating.
Okay.
So take wolf spiders, for example.
Okay.
The males, they create these vibrations, and not just on their webs, but on the ground, on leaves, even on water.
Wow.
It's all part of their mating rituals.
So instead of roses and chocolates, they offer seismic serenades. I mean, that's kind of romantic in a weird spider way. But how do the females even hear that?
So they're not exactly hearing it, they're feeling it.
Okay.
Yeah. They have these super sensitive hairs on their legs that can pick up even the faintest vibrations.
So it's they have built-in subwoofers. Oh my God, that's amazing. I had no idea sound played such a big role in the spider world.
It's huge, yeah, especially for nocturnal species or those living in dense forests, where it's harder to see sound travels.
That's true. It's their own secret form of communication. Okay. I'm starting to see why you find spiders so fascinating. They're full of surprises. We've got hydraulic legs, super strength silk, vegetarianism, and now sonic seduction. What can't they do?
Well, as far as we know, they can't fly in the traditional sense.
Okay, fair point. But what about ballooning? That's got to count for something, right?
Oh, you're right. I almost forgot about ballooning. Yeah, it's one of the most remarkable things about spiders, especially baby spiders.
Yeah, it is.
Ah,
I've always loved seeing those long strands of silk just like carrying these tiny spiders through the air.
oh, it's beautiful.
It looks so peaceful and magical.
It is. It's really a sight to behold. And it's not just about, like, the aesthetics. It's actually, like, an incredibly effective way for them to disperse and colonize new areas.
Yeah, that's true.
So they'll spin out these silk threads, they catch the wind, act like little parachutes.
So they're like basically hitchhiking on the wind. That's pretty clever, but it also seems, I don't know, a little random. Like, how do they control where they go?
It is a gamble, you're right.
Yeah.
But they're not entirely at the mercy of the wind. So, like, they can adjust the length and the amount of silk they release. And some species even seem to be able to sense, like, the best wind conditions for ballooning.
Oh, wow. So there is a method to their, like, airy madness.
Exactly. They're not messing around. They're making the most of their environment, taking advantage of opportunities. Speaking of making the most of their surroundings, let's circle back to those, like, incredible spider webs.
Yes.
Because we've talked about a few types, but, like, the variety is truly astounding.
Right. It's like we've covered like the high-rise condos and we've covered the underground bumpers, but I'm ready for a tour of the entire spider real estate market.
I love it.
What other like architectural wonders do they have up their eight sleeves?
Oh, you can't talk about spider webs without mentioning, like, the classic orb web.
Yeah, the ones that look like those like perfectly symmetrical wheels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're just like a testament to spider engineering. Those radial threads connected by a spiral of, like, sticky silk.
Yeah.
Incredibly efficient at catching flying insects.
I've always wondered, how do they even like build something so symmetrical without like a ruler and a protractor?
It's wild.
It blows my mind.
It all comes down to, like, instinct, you know, and a series of very precise movements.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're, like, actively thinking it through. It's more like they're, like, programmed with this, like, incredible blueprint.
That makes it even more impressive.
I know, right?
What about those like messy, tangled webs you often find like in the corner of a house?
Yeah.
Those don't exactly scream like master builder to me.
Ah, see, you're talking about cobwebs. And yeah, they might not be as, like, aesthetically pleasing as orb webs,
Right.
but they're just as effective in their own way.
Really? There's a method to the madness.
Oh, yeah, totally. So those, like, seemingly random arrangements of threads, totally designed to snag, like, crawling insects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they create this, like, 3D obstacle course that's, like, really tough for prey to navigate.
So it's less about like precision and more about just creating a confusing death trap?
Pretty much.
Okay, that's kind of brilliant in a slightly terrifying way. What other like web designs are out there?
Well, there's the funnel web, which is, you know, exactly what it sounds like.
Okay.
Shaped like a funnel.
Okay, I can picture those. Those are often like found in the grass or under rocks, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the spider, it hangs out in the narrow end of the funnel, just waiting for an unsuspecting insect to wander in.
Right.
And then, bam, dinner is served.
It's like they have a built-in welcome mat and dining room all in one.
Exactly.
This deep dive is really making me appreciate spider webs on a whole new level.
Right.
They're not just like creepy cobwebs.
Right.
They're like masterpieces of engineering, each one tailored to like a specific hunting style, a specific environment. It's incredible.
They are truly remarkable. And we're only just scratching the surface of, like, what makes spiders so fascinating?
Okay, so we're back, listener, for the final part of our spider saga.
Final part, can you believe it?
I know. I can't believe how much we've covered.
So much good stuff.
So much good stuff. Like, we went from just like basic spider facts to spider serenades
yeah.
and like aerial hitchhikers. This Wikipedia deep dive has been wild.
It has been a journey, hasn't it?
It has.
But you know what? We're not even done yet.
What? There's more.
There's always more with spiders. There's this whole other layer to explore, you know, the one that goes beyond just, like, webs and venom and all that stuff. We need to talk about spider adaptations, okay?
Yeah.
Like, the incredible ways they've evolved to thrive in pretty much every corner of the planet.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Like, what kind of adaptations are we talking about? Give me the, like, the spider equivalent of, like, X-ray vision or super speed.
Okay, how about the ability to, like, change color?
What?
Yeah, crab spiders.
Yeah.
Masters of disguise, those guys.
Yeah.
They can blend in perfectly with their surroundings.
Hold on. Color-changing spiders. I thought that was, like, a chameleon thing.
It's the real deal, yeah. They have these specialized pigment cells in their skin that can expand or contract, which alters their coloration to match,
Yeah.
flowers, leaves, whatever.
So they're like living, breathing works of art,
Totally.
just like disappearing into their surroundings. That's
Yeah.
both beautiful and kind of creepy when you really think about it.
Right.
What other like tricks do they have up their 8 sleeves?
Okay, we've got to talk about venom.
Okay.
It's not just about being deadly, though some definitely are.
Sure.
But it's about targeted efficiency.
Okay, so like not all venom is created equal.
Not even close.
Okay.
Some spider venoms are designed to just paralyze prey instantly, while others, they work a little more slowly,
Oh, wow.
breaking down tissues from the inside out.
Oh, that's...
It all depends on the spider's hunting style and what kind of prey they're going after.
So it's less about just like brute force and it's more about like having the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive for like a creature that's, let's face it, pretty small.
They're tiny, but mighty.
Mighty.
And while we're on the subject of their venom,
Yeah.
we should remember that, for all its power, it rarely poses a serious threat to us, to humans.
Oh, okay. That's good to know, especially after that whole discussion about like liquefying prey.
Yeah.
And, like, how can something so small be so potentially dangerous?
Right.
But I guess the same could be said about bees, right?
Totally, yeah. And statistically speaking, you're far more likely to be seriously harmed by, a bee sting than a spider bite.
Okay, that does put things into perspective.
Yeah,
So maybe our fear of spiders is a little overblown?
maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, it's natural to be a little wary of things we don't understand, right?
true.
Especially when they have, 8 legs and fangs.
That's fair. That's fair.
But the vast majority of spiders are totally harmless to humans, and they actually play a really important role in keeping, those pesky insect populations in check.
So they're like tiny, 8-legged pest control experts.
I like that, yeah.
I can get behind that.
Little exterminator.
Yeah, exactly. And besides, they're not all like venom and fangs.
Right.
Some spiders display like surprisingly tender behaviors.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to parenting.
It's true.
Okay, I need to hear more about this
Wait,
parental care from a spider. It doesn't compute.
it does sound a little strange, right? But you might be surprised. Wolf spiders, for example,
Okay.
dedicated mothers, they carry their egg sacs around with them,
Oh.
fiercely protecting them from predators.
Oh.
And then once the spiderlings hatch, they often, hitch a ride on their mother's back until they're, old enough to venture out on their own.
Okay, that's actually adorable. It's like a tiny 8-legged minivan.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, it's making me rethink this whole creepy crawly thing.
Right.
It's all about perspective.
It is. It totally is.
What about jumping spiders? What do they do?
So jumping spiders, too. Some species, they, guard their egg sacs,
Okay.
and they even share food with their young.
Wait, they share food? That's like next level parenting in the spider world.
I know, right?
I'm starting to feel a little bad for all the spiders I've evicted from my house over the years.
They were just looking for a snack, probably.
Probably, yeah, you're right.
Just trying to make their way in the world, just like the rest of us.
Huh? You're right. Speaking of making their way in the world, it's interesting to see how spiders have kind of woven themselves into human culture mythology throughout history.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mean, I know there are spider gods and goddesses in some cultures.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's true.
In some cultures, they're spiders are seen as these symbols of creation, wisdom, even good luck.
Right.
They're weavers, they're builders, resourceful survivors.
They are.
And in other cultures, they represent, the more mysterious, even dangerous aspects of life.
It's like they're a mirror reflecting our own hopes and fears, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We admire their ingenuity,
Yeah,
but we're also a bit intimidated by their power.
it's true.
Yeah.
They are, tiny but mighty in so many ways.
Tiny but mighty. I think that's the perfect way to describe them.
And they have been, they've inspired artists, writers, storytellers for centuries, really.
That's true.
And they continue to, just captivate our imaginations even today,
Expert speaker. I have to say, this deep dive has been such an eye-opener. I came in with a healthy dose of fear and skepticism.
Understandable.
But I am leaving with a newfound appreciation for these creatures, I have to say.
It's been such a pleasure sharing my, my spider love with you
Mm-hmm.
and with our listeners, of course.
Yes.
I hope they'll walk away from this with a little sense of wonder, maybe a
Yeah.
desire to learn even more about, the incredible world of arachnids.
Oh, for sure. You've given us a lot to think about, I'll tell you that.
They never disappoint, spiders. They never disappoint.
That's very true. Very, very true. So, listener, next time you encounter a spider, don't just reach for the the shoe, the bug spray, whatever your method of choice is.
Right.
Take a moment, observe it. Think
Yeah.
about the intricate web it's woven, the clever hunting strategies it uses, and the vital role that it plays in the ecosystem.
They're more than meets the eye, those spiders.
They are.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Until next time, happy spider spotting.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And listener, if you do spot a color-changing spider, send us a picture.
Yeah. We want to see that.
We do. We want to see that.
Right.
Until next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today's deep dive, well, it's on something so familiar, so I guess ordinary, that you might not think there's much to say about it. We're talking about the wheel.
The wheel. Right.
Yeah.
But trust me on this. Even something as basic as the wheel has a past, a whole history, that's surprisingly mysterious and way more interesting than you might think.
It really is amazing when you think about it. I mean, the wheel, it's everywhere, right? But where did it come from? Who just woke up one day and thought, I need a wheel?
Well, and that's just it. There wasn't this single aha moment. We don't have one inventor we can point to. It seems like, well, the wheel kind of developed over a really long time.
So instead of a light bulb moment, it was more of a slow burn.
Exactly. And the evidence is, well, it's scattered, like pieces of a puzzle.
Mhm.
Let's take ancient Mesopotamia, for example, around 3500 BCE. Had these pictographs, kind of like emojis, and some show-wheeled wagons.
Yeah, so Mesopotamia's got some pretty early contenders for, first wheels, but it doesn't end there, right? There's more to this story.
Oh, absolutely. Around the same time, way over in what's now Poland, archaeologists found a clay pot. It's from this Bronicious culture, and get this, it seems to show a wheeled vehicle. And we can't forget about the Jablonjana Marsh's wheel.
What?
The Jablonjana Marsh's wheel. It was found in Slovenia, and it's thought to be the oldest wheel and axle combo we have, somewhere between 3340 and 3030 BCE.
Okay, so we're seeing this pattern, right? It's less about one eureka moment and more like this global phenomenon, things popping up around the same time. It really makes you wonder if the whole who invented it first thing is even the right question to ask. What about Asia? Was the wheel a separate invention over there?
That's where things get even more, well, tangled. There's evidence of wheel tracks in China dating back to around 2200 BCE, but most experts think it's more likely that the idea of the wheel came from the West, not an independent invention.
So it spread through trade routes and stuff.
Exactly. Terrain and trade were super important for how quickly innovations like the wheel could spread back then. But speaking of spreading, there's one big area that's noticeably absent from this whole wheeled world. The Americas.
Right. It's kind of mind-blowing. I mean, no Mayans, no Incas, just cruising around on chariots. It seems strange, doesn't it?
It's one of those big historical head-scratchers. Archaeologists have actually found wheeled toys in Mesoamerica that date back to around 1500 BCE. So they had the concept, but it never really took off for, transportation or anything like that.
So they knew about wheels, but they didn't use them the same way. Why not?
That's the million-dollar question. The main theory is that it comes down to animals. You see, Eurasia had horses, oxen, all good for pulling heavy stuff. The Americas. They had bison, tough to domesticate, and llamas, strong but not ideal for big loads.
So it's like having a fancy car but no roads to drive it on. The Americas just didn't have the right setup for the wheel to really become, I don't know, essential.
Exactly. Without the right animals, the wheel was basically a novelty in the Americas, limited to toys and some ceremonial stuff. Makes you wonder, though, how different their civilizations might have been if they'd had that one missing piece. Can you imagine the Incas with a network of roads and, chariot-riding warriors?
No, that would be something else. Okay, but before we go totally down that rabbit hole, let's come back to the wheel itself. I've always thought it was kind of wild how something so simple could also be so darn effective. The physics behind it are just, elegant.
Totally. The wheel, even the earliest ones, they were like little masterpieces of engineering. To really appreciate it, though, you got to break it down. So we have three main parts: the rim, the hub, and the spokes.
All right, so the rim, that's the outer part, the part that would hold a tire, right? And the hub is the center where it connects to the axle. But the spokes, those are the things that really make it a wheel, aren't they?
Exactly. Think about the very first wheels. Solid discs. Super heavy, took tons of energy to move. Spokes changed the game. By connecting the rim to the hub, they made the wheel way lighter.
And lighter means you need less energy to get it moving, right?
Makes sense. Less energy, smoother movement. But hold on, there's one more thing that's absolutely crucial to the wheel's success. Friction. Or should I say the lack of it.
Ah, friction. The article we were looking at, it really hammered home how important that reduction in friction is.
It's everything. When you drag something, there's a ton of friction fighting against you. Put that same thing on wheels. Friction practically disappears. Well, it mostly shifts to the axle bearings, which is a much, much smaller area.
So it's like swapping out sandpaper shoes for roller skates. Same weight, way less effort to move.
Perfect analogy. And that difference, that reduction in friction, it's what allowed humans to transport more, build bigger, and basically change the world.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about how this one invention, the wheel, I mean, it just like ripples out through history, you know? It's not just about moving things from point A to point B.
You're so right. It's like the wheel, it goes beyond just practicality. It gets into our heads, becomes this powerful symbol.
Yeah, exactly. Like, take the concept of chakras, for example.
Your chakras.
Yeah, in Hinduism and Buddhism, they're these energy centers, and they're often shown as like spinning wheels, right?
Right, and that's the perfect example. The wheel goes from this physical thing to a metaphor. Those spinning wheels, they represent like the flow of energy, how our minds and bodies are connected, all that good stuff.
It's such a cool way to explain something that's like invisible, you know, using the simple image we all get.
And it goes even deeper than that.
Wow.
There's the whole idea of the wheel of time, which pops up in all sorts of cultures and beliefs. It's this idea of cycles of life and death and rebirth happening over and over again.
It's like this ancient link between something we build, the wheel, and something, well, kind of unknowable, like the universe itself.
It really makes you think. Our ancestors, watching the sun and moon, the seasons changing, did they look at the wheel and see those same patterns playing out?
Probably. It's not that crazy of an idea when you think about it. And speaking of patterns, it's wild how the wheel, even today, it's still this big symbol. Company logos, flags, even emojis.
Absolutely. It's like shorthand for moving forward, making progress, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like when you see a spinning globe, what does that make you think of? Global connections, innovation, right?
Sure. But it's funny, right? Because for all that progress stuff, there were some cultures that, well, they kind of said no thanks to the wheel. At least when it came to actually using them. I'm thinking about Tibet, like the article mentioned.
Tibet. Yeah, that's a fascinating case.
Yeah.
Part of it, I mean, it's got to be the landscape, right? The Himalayas aren't exactly chariot friendly.
Yeah, good point. Steep mountains and wheels, not exactly a match made in heaven.
But there's a spiritual side to it, too, you know? Some scholars, they think that not using wheels, it was a way for Tibetans to, like, minimize their impact on the environment, a way to stay present, focused on the here and now, not constantly striving for what's next.
So it's a totally different perspective, right? Not about conquering nature with technology, but more about, like, coexisting with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you, even with something as seemingly straightforward as the wheel, you have all these different interpretations, different ways of relating to it.
It's like this little window into how diverse human thought is and how we make sense of the world around us. You know what else I find super interesting about the wheel? It's how its invention seemed to, like, change how people saw the cosmos.
Oh, tell me more. How so?
Well, I was reading about this thing called the sun cross.
The sun cross.
Yeah, it's a symbol. You see it all over the place. You cross inside a circle or a wheel with spokes radiating out like sunbeams, kind of.
Oh, right. I know what you're talking about.
So the theory is, before the spoked wheel, a lot of cultures, they pictured the sun as this boat sailing across the sky.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, before chariots and stuff, boats were probably the fastest way to get around, right? So naturally, you'd imagine the sun moving like that.
Exactly. But then, boom, the chariot comes along.
Right.
Suddenly, you have this fast, powerful vehicle. Horses pulling it totally blows the boat out of the water, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
And you start seeing this shift. The sun, it graduates from this slow-moving barge to this, like, high-tech chariot pulled by horses. It's like the spoked wheel. It didn't just revolutionize transportation, it revolutionized how people understood the heavens.
It's like they looked at this new invention, this incredible feat of engineering,
Right.
and said, okay, that's how the sun must be moving.
Exactly. It just totally reframed their whole cosmology, which I don't know about you, but I find that mind-blowing. You ever think it's kind of funny? We use that saying, don't reinvent the wheel. Like, it means doing something pointless, right?
Totally. Like if you're reinventing the wheel, you're really not doing anything new at all.
Exactly. But after, really going deep on the wheel, its history and everything, I almost feel like that saying's unfair. It's way too important for that.
I agree, 100%. It's so easy to forget, right? Because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But the wheel's impact, it's huge. We wouldn't have, like, any of the stuff we take for granted without it.
Totally. I mean, seriously, no wheel, no big farms, no cities, no shipping stuff across the world. Heck, we wouldn't even be exploring space without it.
Right. From those first clunky wheels to, like, the Mars rover, it all comes down to that same idea, reducing friction. It's what pushes us to invent, to explore.
It really makes you wonder, what will people in the future look back on and say, that was their wheel? Like what invention's going to totally change everything?
Now, that is a question. I mean, who knows what the future holds, right? But you look around today, and there's so much cool stuff happening. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, green energy. It's like any of those could hold the next big breakthrough.
It's kind of exciting and terrifying at the same time, all that potential. But I think it's about time for us to slow down a bit. Apply the brakes to this conversation, so to speak.
You did it.
But before we go, I want to leave everyone with something to think about. We've covered a lot, right? History, physics, even the spiritual side of the wheel.
We've really gone full circle.
We have. So here's the big question, and I'm serious about this one. If you had to pick one thing, one object to symbolize human ingenuity, would it be the wheel? Or is there something else out there, something that shows not just our skills, but our creativity, our ability to adapt, our need to figure things out and make our mark on the world? That's something I'm going to be pondering for a while.
Me too, and hopefully everyone listening. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of the wheel. Until next time, keep those brains turning.